Uh, so much lag. These NFTs aren't real NFTs. When OMI to Gem? When OMI to Lambo? When Moon? Ugh. Yes, it's time to download a real app. Yes, yes.
Thou hast summoned me.
All right, everyone. How's everyone doing? So today we've got the day you've all been waiting for. We've got the AMA session with Trevor, who is the lead producer for VeVe right now. And firstly, before we start, I just want to thank the people who have sponsored this video. So, i.e., the people who have helped present me in HD now, because I do have a new camera. So shout out to these guys, BrockmcBlockchain, who has supported me a lot. Some of you guys probably know Brock, Adam Awesomeface, NFT Grandpa, the Cryptoverse, Nicole Smith, Munawer Sha, CryptoManiac, chestttnuttt, and All Chat Gaming. So all of these guys have been supporting the channel just through, donations and helping out. And, thank you everyone who has subscribed, watched, and yeah, just been helpful in the community, to be honest. So without further ado, we're going to start off this interview with Trevor. So I'm just going to ask the first question. So Trevor, what exactly is kind of your history in, what got you to where you are? In terms of your hobbies, career, did you study software development? What led you into kind of like this gaming niche? And, is there like anything else you want to share that's kind of like related to the development in your career?
Yeah, all right. First of all, thanks for having me. I love doing these, and it's cool to be here with UK. Thank you for like engaging with the community and all the stuff that you're doing around that. I guess about me. So I started in game development. I think most people like I feel like everybody played like video games when they were kids at some level. I was obviously into them like everybody else. At some point, people start falling off of it, and I realized, oh, I'm still kind of invested in this. And I was always like a pretty creative person. Even the games I like to play tend to be like fairly creative games, building games. Like still probably my favorite game ever is still probably like Roller Coaster Tycoon. So I was always interested in like, construction, creativity, like that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Though I play everything. So it kind of basically I started learning about it, getting involved in, okay, what does it actually take to build this stuff? And when I was in, I guess like even like back in high school, I was playing around with like Unity engine. You can download it for free and just mess around with it.
Yeah.
Learning how to build it. I took like some programming classes. Ultimately, I went to USC for my undergrad. I was in the film school. USC School of Cinematic Arts has a interactive media major, which is a game development. It's game development plus it's things around that, but it's very much focused on interactive experiences and more on the design and production side of it. The engineering school at USC has a CS, computer science degree with a focus on games. My background is not programming. I can do a little bit of it, but everything that I write is a pile of spaghetti and absolute jank
spaghetti
garbage.
code.
So it's like I can do prototyping. I can't write scalable software on my own. I need a team.
Fair enough. Yeah.
Which is why I'm a producer. No, that's not why. But so I started like in the design space, and then I moved into production through the various roles. So out of school, the first like a major game studio that I worked at was at Riot Games. I started there on their one of the R&D teams building Legends of the game that became Legends of Runeterra. I was there for 3 years through the launch of that game. After that, I moved over to a Santa Monica studio, which are the creators of the God of War franchise, working with them on the next God of War. There I was working with actually both Riot and at Sony, I was working with the art teams. So at Riot, I worked on, we called it the Realization Team, which is a pretty grandiose title. But what they basically did, if you're familiar with the games, is of the game, we have like all the champions in League. And then in Legends of Runeterra, you can play those champions as well. And they have special visual effects and animations and abilities to really make them feel special. Probably the like marquee content in that game is they have these like level up animations. If you complete a quest around those characters in Legends of Runeterra, the champions level up, and there's a 5-second little like vignette that we play that's kind of showing off like kind of the character fantasy and the IP resonance around that character.
Yeah.
And so I was helping lead the team that made all those moments. And they're these like big, like 3D animation, visual effects, sound effects, lots of really cool stuff going on. And then at Sony, I was working with their environment art and lighting teams, which is on a game like that, like the current, like the next God of War, there's probably 350 people working on that game at least, and like probably 40 or 50 environment artists and 10 lighters. So pretty huge team, couple producers on that, making really high-end 3D content, which is I think part of what led me to here, because we're also making really high-end 3D content and building out the pipeline to create a bunch of that and deliver at a super high quality bar.
Wow.
Yeah, I guess like hobbies. Yeah, I love games. I love, obviously, I'm learning about crypto. That's slowly becoming a hobby, and learning about NFTs. That's been really interesting to learn about. I guess as a random aside, and between like video games, roller coaster tycoon, and just interrelated building things, my other favorite thing in the world is like theme parks and roller coasters and like themed experiences like that.
Yeah, so, I love themed experiences.
Yeah.
It's like that's kind of what got me into like, you know, VR and AR is the whole kind of like, you know, immersive experience. You can like build something and let someone try. Like that's literally how I got into coding. Was I basically tried out Unity as well. I was tinkering around Unity, and I tried out what is it? I think it's called Vuforia, with that the AR plugin, and then did a little bit of playing around with AR Core, and then I basically made like a VR game where you're in a Pac-Man maze, but rather than Pac-Man chasing you, you've got Donald Trump. And he's shouting Donald Trump phrases, and the videos of it on my channel, like way back. Like some people found it, and they're just like, "Hey, what is this game?" But yeah, that was pretty fun. So when you were at Riot, did you actually like playing the Riot games before you joined, like League and all of that stuff?
So Riot was it's changed. Historically pretty notorious about only really hiring people that were already into the game. I was part of that kind of first wave of, oh, we're not going to do that anymore because that's not how the real world works.
Yeah.
And that's I don't mean that as a slight at Riot. Like that's actually, they have amazing people over there. But I wasn't into League of Legends before I started working there. And I joke that like, League of Legends is also a notoriously difficult game to learn. So my joke is, oh, it's so easy to learn League of Legends. All you need to do is work at the company and see it every day, all day, and then you'll eventually learn how to play it.
Yeah.
I'm still like bronze, so I'm still terrible. It's still like,
oh, you're in the bronze life.
Oh yeah, I'm terrible. But I play it like honestly, like my enjoyment of that game goes as far as like, oh, I really want to nail the skill shot. Like I'm not like macro game strategy. Like no, I'm not about that. I'm just
you know what's funny? Like back in the day when I was like a little kid, like playing these online games, you know, you would get people who say, hey, you know, I'm going to get my dad who works for the company to like ban you. Like you could literally be like, I will get someone I know in the company to ban you if you like make fun of my rank.
Oh, my dad works at League of Legends. Yeah, well, I actually do. I mean,
they'll be like, do your best.
So it's funny that you mentioned. I have one of the things that I did like to write, and it's actually one of the things that got me really into, you got to do the community engagement thing. One of the reasons I made this Twitter and immediately started talking with the community is like they have this thing called they call it red naming, but it's basically like if you ever go on their Reddit, all the rioters have like a red icon. So they call that getting red named. It's basically letting people know that you're an official Riot employee, and interacting with the community that way is super fun. I have found when I'm playing League, when I work there, I would have Riot in front of my name. That's kind of the way you would know you were playing with the Rioter, because only Riot employees can have Riot in their gamer tag. Yeah. And that was it was really fun because sometimes you get people that would just flame you, but most of the time people are just really excited. And it's like to like be playing with the Rioter and like asking them questions. Like it's very like you're in the middle of that really intense kind of twitchy game, but you still see people spamming you in the alt chat, and you want to respond because it's like that dialogue, that interaction with the community. It's fun. It's really fun for me to do. Like it's fun for on both sides of the table. I think that's why I love to do it. Why Reese and a lot of the team like to do it as well.
Yeah. Oh, that's definitely sounds really cool. So just specifically in terms of where you are in VeVe right now. So even I didn't quite understand your role. Just on face value, I had to like actually talk to you and get to know you a bit more just to understand kind of what you're doing. And it sounds like, you do a lot of stuff. You're like a jack of all trades. You're doing, a lot of stuff with the community as well, getting ideas, proposing them. So I just for people who, kind of get confused as well, what exactly is your role within VeVe? Like, where do you sit in this hierarchy between, where Dave you is and like everyone else, and then like what's your interaction with everyone? And like you said that you're not like the main person who kind of like writes code specifically. You're a producer. You've got like a separate backend team. So are you like, I guess like just what is it that you do for VeVe?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that's fair. Fair question. So basically, so my role is like I was a producer. I'm specifically a content producer. So I'm basically figuring out. I should also say I report to Dan. He's kind of the overall product owner of like what VeVe is as well.
Oh, so Dan is the product owner.
Well, Dan is the COO, so he kind of owns the product. He's also on the Ecomi side,
Okay.
like the Ecomi piece. So it's like,
Yeah.
but as far as anything content related, I'm generally owning the development of that content. So answering like if the question is what kind of NFTs are we building, and how are we going to actually build them, and like what are they going to do? That's that's largely on me. Obviously, from a creative standpoint and from like a product standpoint, what it's like the licensors have a huge say in what they want their NFTs to be. And it depends on, and some licensors are very hands-on, some are much more hands-off. But ultimately, I do a lot of like, basically, I'm like kind of figuring out what we're going to build around the licensors, building the team to help us build that content, and then working through the development process of that content. So yeah, so that's basically my role. I'm basically coordinating the content development for all the NFTs.
Okay. That's pretty cool. But so when you were at Riot, you had like quite a senior position there. As you were. Now you're like the head of content at VeVe, right?
Yeah, I'm the lead content producer at VeVe. I was more junior at Riot, but like
okay.
my role there was a similar kind of content ownership. So I think of a game as like, or think of kind of everything that a game does. Like a game has a bunch of features in it, and the way that they did it at Riot is like each of those features, at least on Legend of Runeterra, would have a different like owner of that content. So there would be like kind of a product owner in our case for like the core gameplay, for each set of content that we were putting out with the cards on that game. Other features, when we would spin up teams, and there would be an owner of that team. So like the area that I would own was a lot of the like realization stuff, and also just audio in general across the board with that game. And then that would mean that I'm doing a little bit less answering what we're working on, because that's kind of, it's such an interlocking kind of system. You want everything to work together. And there's like a game director role, which is kind of the overseeing, sets the vision for the entire product, the entire game. And they kind of have more to say in that. So there's a kind of dispersal of responsibility, for lack of a better word, or a dispersal of ownership is probably a better way of putting it. But I would like own my component of it, and we would also figure out, okay, this is what we're going to build. How do we build it? And with looking at the time we have to do it, the resources we have access to, what's the quality bar that we want to hit? Because like you're always making decisions around like, okay, what do we want to deliver at a really high quality bar? Because this is super resonant to players, and they're super noticeable as well. Versus what's something that we can pull back on a little bit. We don't need to push as far, because ultimately it doesn't negatively impact the experience as much. You're always making those kinds of prioritization decisions. You're kind of almost like ranking. We call it like almost like a stack rank, kind of all the different features that you want to deliver, deciding what's the most important, what's less important, what's going to deliver the most value, what do we have to do but isn't going to deliver that much value. And you basically flex your resources one way or the other in order to deliver that. And you're trying to make your most educated guess on what that's going to be. I think and like people have to remember, it's like nobody has infinite resources to throw at these things. And there are certain things that's like, you can't have like, nobody has infinite time, nobody has infinite money.
Yeah.
And while those games are extremely large, and like Legend of Terra was a big team, we were 120 people on that game at its peak when we were at launch. The next God of War is already like 350, so that game is even bigger than that, but it's still not infinite, and they still have only a certain amount of time, a certain amount of people they can throw at it. So they have to, all these games, all these products have to be making smart decisions about what they're building, and that's part of like, that's the actually the most fun part of the role, honestly.
Yeah, that actually rolls quite nicely into my next question. So I know that you guys have been hiring quite recently. I know you had like an intern that was hired quite recently as well, just to kind of like help out. So that's really nice to see, because there were quite a lot of people saying, the typical conspiracy theorists. They're like, hey, why isn't OMI hiring? Like, this must be a scam, blah, 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 along with like all of the other conspiracy theories. And then they see the hiring ads and then they just shut up. So I know that expanding the team is quite important, but at the moment, as you're like onboarding new people, you obviously have to have this fine balance between new features as well as optimizations and fixing whatever bugs are coming in. There's always like things that cannot be identified in just the testing phase. Like there is like hundreds of thousands of users right now. They will probably find something like some kind of exploit. So just how are you kind of I guess, what's your process of prioritizing what features need to be released versus what needs to be fixed ASAP? Like who's involved in that conversation? Like just kind of like what does that process look like?
Yeah, I think that, so that process involves a couple people. I have like my corner, like I don't want to say my corner, the area I have most ownership over is anything that's more like content related. And namely focused to like upcoming content and deciding like what we're going to do there. I think Dan is the person who's making more of those like high level kind of product, the kind of like what we're focusing on decisions. And those decisions are off, like the way you would make a decision like that is to do it in the mind of, okay, what are we doing that's going to deliver the most value at, and what can we do now we can get out like quickly at a fairly low cost? And cost is not just how much money is it going to cost to build. Cost is honestly I think a lot of times the more important resource is time. Like we're looking at, okay, there's a lot of really cool things we can do. What are the things that we can do now to deliver as a lot of value that isn't going to that we can do quickly, so we can build that value as fast as possible for the users? And I won't go through the mechanics of that process. It's ultimately, we have a list of features and a list of bugs, and we try to like stack rank them together and decide what we're doing going up and down that list. But basically it's about and the other thing is, it's more than just building a feature is more than just like, again, it's more than just here's the product and putting it out there. There's a rollout process for all this stuff. And it's like marketing of a new feature is a product onto itself. Like you have to build that content. You have to figure out how you're going to deliver that content, to figure out who you're going to target it at. There's like a lot of steps to delivering a product that people may not consider. I'm sure this is a question coming from like, hey, we keep asking for the things, but we're not seeing them.
Yeah.
That stuff is like anything you're asking for. It's like we're obviously thinking about it. We're obviously seeing it all day. And without talking about it, because I don't want to talk about it in more detail. But like a lot of it's an active development. We're thinking about it a lot. We just don't want to share it. For the same reason, like it's not ready to share. There's no good rollout plan for it to be shared. It's a feature that it might be something that's very complicated to do and just takes a long time. And then the other thing is like, going back to the competitor thing, it's like, if we're announcing stuff, someone else is going to hear about it. And I think this is what I was talking about with that post to Bell, is like, if we talk about everything we're doing, we're basically just broadcasting to the world and to our competitors that this is what we're doing, and it gives that away. Similarly on hiring, because I know the question about like, are we not hiring? Like, that's like, you don't have to post publicly to hire people. Like, there's ways to do it. Like, maybe we're not announcing stuff because we don't want the world to know who we're hiring, because that would give you a hint at what we're building. I've noticed
that VeVe / Ecomi, they hire, like really, up there people from just what I've seen. And typically, a lot of people don't realize this. like if a company is hiring a new executive, someone to fill a CTO position, they never actually advertise it. What they do is they look at a competitor company who's doing something similar and they'll try and poach their CTO with a better offer. And this sort of stuff is obviously never advertised. And because it's not advertised, people don't see that. And that's what I feel like, because VeVe is getting the best of the best in the industry, they're obviously not going to like throw it out there for the public to see. At best, I probably imagine, something that isn't as, as senior, maybe like just a remote developer, for example, that does something in the back end. I could see that being advertised, but I wouldn't see head of licensing being advertised or something like that.
I think there's now this is going a little bit off the rails from my area of expertise, and like I certainly don't want to put speculation out there, but like you hire, like people hire to fill a role, and they hire because that role is going to provide value to what they're doing. And it also is the tacit implication when you say publicly that maybe that's something that we're looking for, that we need more of. When you have really senior, like no one's going to say, hey, we're hiring a new CTO or something. Like they're not going to put out a position for that, because it has the implication that our CTO isn't that, like, and I'm using this as an example. It has implications, and people read into that, as you see the people who are like reading into it on on Twitter.
Yeah, that's going to affect. That's obviously going to affect the price of OMI if they see, Michael Duffy's leaving, for example.
Yeah, I don't want to speculate. I don't want to put any, I'm really not trying to put anything out there. I'm using that completely as a hypothetical.
Yeah, and as an example.
I'm very much on the VeVe side of the business, not on the OMI side of the business. So I don't want to make any like promises or anything in that direction. But it's like worth pointing out, it's like we're obviously focused on delivering value to the players, literally to the investors. So like that's the coin holders. Like that is something that's really important. The business exists to create value. That's why pretty much any business should exist. To think that, and there's strategy to do that is probably just not apparent to the average user or to the average player. But that doesn't mean those things aren't happening. Like these decisions are made strategically. And part of that is like you don't want to just like you would never play chess against someone and tell everybody all the moves you're thinking about making.
Exactly.
Like that's a bad example.
No, it makes sense. I'm pretty sure everyone would have understood that. So just on that point now, what I did also want to kind of really help people out here, because this video is hopefully going to be some good reference material for a lot of people who kind of get into OMI and ask, like all of the typical when questions, which is why I've got that background. All I do is when. I think the best question is not to ask when something is happening, but why. So for example, a lot of people ask when new exchange. I think what they should be asking is, why has the new exchange not been delivered yet? And then when they ask that question, they realize, hey, it's like a two-person conversation. There's Ecomi on one side and then the actual exchange on the other, and they need both sides to fulfill their independent parts. And Reese has said this himself, where the world of licensing moves very, very slowly. Licensors take things at their own time, which is fair enough. Same with the exchanges. The exchanges have to obviously do things at their own pace. So a lot of people just think VeVe has like ultimate autonomy over everything. They just command something and it's done, and they're just choosing not to do it. But a lot of people just don't understand. So basically, the next question I want to ask is, so let's say there was an idea proposed. And for the purpose of this idea, purely hypothetical. So this one, shout out to Brock and Adam. Let's say we want to develop a drivable T-Rex. And okay, so
itself, yes.
Yeah, we're doing the drivable T-Rex today. We're gonna whip out Unity and make it right now. So let's say we've got this idea of a drivable T-Rex. What is the process, like just in as much detail as possible, from this initial idea being proposed? Who would you take that idea to kind of get it approved? How would you kind of conceptualize this idea into something that's feasible? How would you break it down into, the different parts that need to be completed? Because obviously there's going to be, I guess, some coding involved, some like, asset design. How would you kind of allocate that work and I guess estimate how long it's going to take, prioritize it, then possibly test it, and then, maybe beta test it and then eventually get it to production. just in as much detail as you can. And if you outsource anything to anyone, it would be good to like expand on that, because I know that you guys do outsource some work to game studios as well, but a lot of people aren't aware of that. They just assume, Trevor does everything on his own. So it would be good just to expand on that. So from the idea of, hey, I want a drivable T-Rex, how would you end up implementing a drivable T-Rex?
Yeah, so I'm going to like kind of wash over the one of, okay, assume we have the license to whatever.
Assume you have the license for a T-Rex.
Assume we have the license, which is almost like saying like, which is like, that's a huge amount of work and that takes months, but that's not my side of the business. I'm not involved in the signing the licensing deal side of this. So I wouldn't be able to answer that. So assuming we had the green light and it's just like, okay, this is what we're going to build. How do we make this thing? So the first thing I would look at is, okay, I think of this in terms of like a game asset, and it has like there are certain features it needs to have. I need a T-Rex. I need a model of a T-Rex. I need it to be a model that's performant, that can run in engine in real time, which means that there are certain limitations to poly count, certain limitations to texture count, texture detail. I want it to be at I want it to look as good as possible, but still be performant. And that is the hardest part of the balance. So, and then so I'll start there. So if we're creating a 3D model like that, we would sign, like, we have an internal team that we're building that can help create those. We also have a bunch of, in order for us to ramp up and also reach really some of the best talent, we work with a bunch of outsourced partners, and like all the studios we work with tends to be like games, CG focused. I don't want to say CG, games asset focused as opposed to like film asset focused, because films don't have the same constraints at all. Like if you're making them, because it's pre-rendered, if you're making, if you're doing like, if I'll use a Jurassic Park, if you're Universal and you're making a Jurassic Park movie, you can make your T-Rex just a sculpt, and just like that's a beautiful 3D sculpt. It's probably 10 million polygons. It's some huge number. You probably have 8K, 12K or more textures all over the freaking thing, which again, you can do that because all you're going to do is throw it into a render farm, and you're going to animate it, throw it into a render farm, and it's going to generate the image, and someone's going to composite it together. So the end product isn't that asset that needs to be delivered. It's the image on the screen. Yeah. Those assets do not work in games. They are not built for games. They cannot run in games. If you tried to put it on your computer, it would probably blow it up. They're just very powerful. They're just very large, very hard to run. So we work at the studio that can, first they make that sculpt, but then they have the expertise to do a retopology pass, which is basically you take that 10 million asset, 10 million poly thing, take it down to 100 to 200,000 polygons. That's something that can actually run. You take those super high res textures and you make them, as opposed to 8K, you do 2K or 4K textures. And then and that gets you so far. And then you do a lot of other tricks. Like there's this concept of like they're called like trim sheets or something. So what it is basically, if you have a repeating asset all over your object, dinosaur is probably not a good example because it's fairly organic, but like or imagine you were building, like if you had a building and you have like a repeating, like a detail that goes around the building. I wouldn't sculpt that. I wouldn't put that in my texture a bunch of times. I would put it in it once and then have all those points of the building reference at one place in the unwrap. Yeah. So there's this, oh God, I'm jumping all over the place here, so people are totally going to get lost. But there's like when you're making a model, basically you do the high poly sculpt, you're taking it down to low poly. Out of that process, you're basically baking out you're baking normals, which is basically taking that low poly detail, baking it into textures so you can use those textures. There's also a UV unwrap process in that, which is basically, because if you imagine, you can't put an image on a 3D surface. You have to like, if you imagine if you unwrapped a globe, it wouldn't look like a sphere. It'd look like all those little like strips. Yeah. So part of the job is actually creating all that and arranging it on a sheet. It's a very complicated process that honestly a 3D artist can explain way better than I can. I'm kind of jumping all over the place here.
But again, doing that myself.
You've done all that. Now you've got a static 3D model. Yeah. That you can then rig, which is basically you're putting a skeleton inside it that you can animate against. Yeah. And that like those skeletons, it's like bones and then like skinning and muscle groups. So you can basically say how things move inside of it. And those can be very simple to incredibly complicated. Like you can have like as many bones as you want. It just makes it, allows you to get to a much higher level of detail, but it's a much more complicated asset. Then the animator comes in and animates that skeleton, and that's how the object moves. So drivable T-Rex, what would I want in that? I would want an idle animation, which is basically when the T-Rex is still, him just being there doing T-Rex things. I'd want a run cycle. So what that means is like, okay, I need a looping animation for him to run. The challenge with the T-Rex is like, as opposed to like, actually one of the, like, I need him a looping animation. I don't know if I have different speeds. So I might need a walk one. I need a run one. I need like, is he turning? Like, so you build these animations, and then there's a lot of tools built into the engines to help you, as well as in terms of how you build the asset, to help you kind of tween between the different animations and basically use different animations in different times. A T-Rex probably isn't strafing. So like, but if you match like a video game character when you're strafing, so it's like I have an animation walking forwards, I have my side to side animation, I have my back animation. And then I have to do, if it's like on a console where I can move in 360, I have to do all the tweens between that. And I basically have to build my character to do that. All that stuff is pretty complicated animation work, pretty technical. And then there's a lot of tools that you have to build in order to make different parts work together. Along this way, I'm taking all these assets into the engine, testing them to make sure they're working, making sure it's still running, it's performant. The implementation of the animation system, because it's basically, it's not just a single animation, it's a system. It's like a tree, almost like a flow chart, where it's like, I'm still, and then I start running. So go to the running animation, go to the turning animation if I do that. So you build like that, you can build out that basically that big if and kind of, that state machine kind of thing. And again, along the whole way, I'm testing, making sure it works. I'm also sending it back to the licensor to make sure that they are happy with it and that they approve what it looks like now, what it's doing right now. And then once all that is done, then we basically have to make sure we put it in the end. It's like in the engine, and then it's something that we can kind of prep to like turn into a asset to release. There's a ton of different steps to it, and depending, and it's like, it comes down to, when you figure out what you're trying to do, you try to understand all the pieces of it, and then you try to build those before you get it, because you don't want to like mess something up and have to go back and redo it. You don't want to have to like discover new work down the line. So you want to think through the functionality and then break it down into its like constituent parts, and then have people work on those parts. And hopefully we have a team that we're working with on it who can deliver really extraordinary content. And I think I really think we do. We have some we have, our internal team is really good. And then we have like just some incredible art studios that we're working with too, to help us deliver this content. We have at least and they've worked on like everything, like 4 or 5 different studios that have all done like AAA content for games. They really know what they're doing.
Yeah. Oh, that's pretty cool. So in software development, for example, we use something called Agile, where we basically, everyone's heard of it now if they've done anything in tech. Yeah. So we use Agile. So we essentially kind of take some big chunky piece of work, break it down into small features, and then as a group, we try and estimate how long each of these is going to take, and we assign them points. Because typically there was like this way where you something called waterfall, which you probably already know, and you basically have one product. You spend your whole time building out the whole product, and then you release that whole product in one chunk, and then you get a bunch of bugs, and you have to pull that product down, and it just takes forever to fix. So do you guys, how in terms of estimating, say, the drivable T-Rex, I imagine you would have to break, like you said, you'd break it down into different parts. How long do these kind of assets that you build, these new 3D NFTs, how long do they typically take to make from start to end? Like, what's the estimation process look like?
Yeah. So ultimately, it comes, the artists are the ones who help us estimate that. For an asset like the one I just described, that'll be months. Like just the high poly sculpt can take 2 weeks. To retop it and actually set up the asset properly so that it'll run can take another week. Texturing can take a week if you really want to get that super high level of detail. No, usually not quite that long. rigging's pretty short unless you're doing a really complicated rig, but that's like 1 or 2 days. Animation is usually the longest though. Like each animation is probably like 3 to 5 days. Like an idle animation, they tend to be longer. They tend to be more character expressive as opposed to like a functional thing. Like a run cycle is kind of functional. It's not really like, there's not much character to it as much as there isn't just like, what does that T-Rex look like when he's just like sitting there, like roaring at shit or what have you. So like those animations, like per animation can be 3 days to a week. And that would probably be that character probably has 6 to 8 animations in it. So it's another 3 weeks of work there. So already we're like 6, 7 weeks into it. Some of the stuff you can do in parallel, like if you can do a rig on a high poly and then start animating like as that and then incorporate them together, but it's always a little bit riskier and there's always like tweaks that need to be made. Same like some like sound effects, maybe visual effects you can kind of do in parallel, but that again, it's like it has to match up properly at the end. So it's like there is like the critical path of like what's going to take the longest is for an asset like that is probably like 6 to 8 weeks or more. And then or longer, like if it's like, and then that's of course all the that doesn't count any of the time where we have to get it into the end and make sure it's working. Also show it to the licensor and get their feedback, because feedback you have to remember, like we're pretty big for the NFT space, but we're not Universal. Like Universal is a huge company, and they have a lot of projects that they might be doing around. I mean, hell, they're working like if they're doing a new Jurassic World movie, that's a $250 million investment that they're doing, and so they have a lot of people focused on that. And so to get our art into that pipeline, to get it through the whole review process, can take days or like weeks to get feedback, which just adds to that process. So yeah, it really can be like a many-month process to get even a single asset made.
I think people they never see it from the licensor perspective, because I made this point as well. So for example, people were awaiting, NFLPA, for example, to like, wasn't this announced, wasn't this coming, what happened to that? But I've said, NFLPA is a huge organization. They probably did, have some long review process that just has not been completed yet.
And an organization like that, not only do they have their internal like organizational review, but if there's like anything relating to player likeness, and that's a likeness review, like that means that like the player has a say on that, and so that has to get to the player.
I don't like the way I look. Go change it.
And this is probably not their priority, but like this is like that's just part of the process when you're working with these brands. These are the things that you have to do, and it's just part of what you're trying to build.
I've been told that has actually happened with the Edo, with Ultraman and the Slimer. Apparently the licensors weren't happy with the artwork from a previous AMA, so those had to get I guess not released, and spend more time on redoing those.
That would be the outcome. So I didn't work on that set, so I can't speak to it specifically. But yes, the outcome of if artwork isn't approved at any stage, like if the licensor isn't happy about it, we're going to redo it, because it's like we can't say for us to go like for the licensor to go like, hey, we don't like that. It doesn't represent the IP the way we want. We can't just go around and say, well, we're going to do what we want, because that's just not how this works.
Exactly. That's quite interesting though, because when the Ghostbusters or when the Ultraman drop happened, all of the other Ultraman NFTs were released, but it was just the Edo. So is that kind of like normal then? Like if the licensor doesn't like one of them, but you've got like a full set and the rest of the set is fine, you can go ahead with the release?
It depends on what. I don't want to speak too much to this, because again, I didn't work on that set. It very much depends on what the licensor wants and what we what we think could be the right thing to do in that situation. Ultimately, like again, it's like you try to I want to go back to like your example, how you described agile versus waterfall development. At the end of the day, an individual asset is much more waterfall than agile. Like there's not much build, test, iteration. There's a lot, like there's iteration in terms of getting approvals and feedback, but that's just a stage of the process. Ultimately, before that, we're like figuring out, okay, this is what we want to do. The pipeline for delivering it is fairly well known. So we try to come up so we basically know all the steps we need to make to deliver that asset. And then we basically build out the pipeline to deliver it with time taken into account for like iteration, implementation, approvals, feedback, all that kind of stuff. I can't really speak to that asset in particular, but that might be a case of like, it just didn't get approved and we're still working on it, or it just like content, like things didn't align with what they were looking for when it came down to it. Like, I don't know. I shouldn't be speculating like this because it's really not my asset to talk about.
Of course, yeah.
If that makes sense.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's like ultimately we're trying to like, on the product side as well, like there's a lot more like iterative development that's like natural to agile. We're constantly like building, releasing, getting feedback on what's working and not working. We have our own experience. We're clearly getting a lot of feedback from our community as well. And we take that into consideration. So we're always like doing reprioritization to make sure that the things that are going to deliver the most value are being prioritized.
Cool. Awesome. So just on that point, so we do have community questions as well. So I just wanted to spend the first half of this, just because I did mention earlier, kind of going through the more technical questions, just as, like I said, I want to use this as reference and others can use this as reference when, you know, the next time we get the 100 when questions, like, why is this taking so long? Why can't they do this? Like, we can just refer to this video because we've got it all here, like in one, like comprehensive video.
The answer, like the blanket general, and this is a generalization answer to the when question, is if we're not telling you about it, we probably can't for a reason that has something to do either than we're just fucking with you. Like, it's probably a really good reason. And when we can tell you about it, trust me, we're going to tell you about it. Like, there is strategy and clear decision making behind all these things that we're trying to do. Like, this isn't fly by the seat of your pants. This is like listening, adapting, and making sound, like trying to make sound strategic decisions in order to deliver the most value. And sometimes that means we can't tell you what we're working on.
Yeah, I think that's typically just a kind of intrinsic problem with the crypto community, just because there's no, I've mentioned this before to you, there's like no barrier to entry for anyone to get into crypto. It's like, if you imagine an analogy where there was no barrier to entry to driving a car. You don't need to do a license. You don't need to get a license. You don't need to pass a theory test. Like, that's obviously going to end in mayhem. But there's no like test that you have to take that proves you have, you know, the bare minimum kind of like understanding of how, you know, the economy works, how crypto like works, you know, how a business works. It's just, you can literally go in, buy something, and then demand that, you know, it needs some pumping because you don't like the price of it where it is right now. So that's just like the kind of issue. And I think also because so many projects, like an insane amount of projects, have no product. It's literally like, I've shown this in a previous video where I showed Dogecoin, for example. It was literally like a copy and paste of the code base from, ultimately it was from Litecoin. I think it was like Litecoin, then Lucky Coin, and Dogecoin. And literally, if you look in the GitHub for Dogecoin, you can still see references to Litecoin in it, like in the front page. It's like, you know, Litecoin script. And it's like, you know, this is literally a copy and paste.
He has openly admitted, like, they made that as a joke. They were
it took him 2 hours to do. It was a 2-hour project.
Exactly. And the fact is, like, I don't know how to, like, look, I mean, this is something that you're going to have to deal with in space. You deal with the same thing in games. Like, the reality is, people just do not understand how this product is built. And then if you try to explain it, the answers are just generally way more complicated and way more boring that people want. And it's also not the answer they're looking for. So it's like, it comes out to, so ultimately what people are really, I feel like a lot of times what people are asking for is to have their biases confirmed and have their opinions like met. They're not necessarily like, and that's not real value. Like, confirming your bias, like, to me that is, and like, real value is building this kick-ass art, building these kick-ass content that people are really going to enjoy. Again, it's like, yes, I can just say, I know I know how cool the content is that we're working on and what's coming. Like, it's in my opinion, it's like fucking awesome, and I really can't wait for people to see it. I just can't tell you about it now because it's like a tiny bit of like, maybe a tiny bit of like that little like yay, we know it exists and we know it's cool. Like, yeah, that's not really worth that much compared to like, now we've just really deflated, taken the wind out of the sails of, oh, the big drop, this is the thing, that grand reveal kind of thing. So it's like, is that little bit now actually worth losing all that later? And the truth, and it's like, usually it isn't. Not to mention, it's like, that's also just the one-to-one transaction. The reality is there's a licensor behind that. And if we jump the gun on this stuff, that's going to piss the licensor off, which means even less value down the line. So it's like, we can't, like, again, it's more than just giving people what they want right now isn't necessarily what's going to be the most valuable thing for everybody. And we want to do the thing that's going to be the most valuable for everybody.
Exactly.
I'm ranting now. I'm not answering questions.
Yeah. Just what I was going to add to that is, now I've just forgotten what I was going to say. Now I was like getting super into it. Oh yeah, so the product point. Yeah. So like today, for example, I shared a meme. It was basically it's like the smart thinking one, where it's like you can't have delays to a product if you have no product, which is like most cryptocurrencies out there. It's just a token where they've copied and pasted, some Binance Smart Chain repo, slapped on their own logo, and then just released it on Binance Smart Chain. I think it cost like 1 BNB to do an ICO, and then that's it. And then they just raise some funds, and they may leave the project, they may rug pull, which is what's happening a lot. But Ecomi, they I've actually tried looking for the code. There was like an initial GitHub, and then everything just got moved privately, or for fair reason. And then people are just kind of used to seeing these pump and dump hype coins. But I think what also gets missed is, correct me if I'm wrong, but I've never seen a crypto project to date outside of what Ecomi has that has an actual partnership with a top tier PR firm. Because in my emails, if you look at my emails, and I've made a point of this, it's just flooded with these scam coins, which are emailing me saying, hey, we'll pay you 1 million shitcoin if you do a video about our shitcoin. And I don't bother with them, because I've made a point where I'm only going to cover stuff that I personally believe in. I'm not going to shill shitcoins if you give me shitcoins to pump and dump or whatever. So that's the thing with Ecomi is they're doing something that a lot of projects have just never done before. So just on the point of the PR firm, like, do you know of any other project that you can think of that kind of has these, I guess, this network of top tier connections that Ecomi currently has, especially the PR firm? Because I've never seen that in a crypto project before.
So let me preface this by saying, again, I'm still fairly new to the crypto space. I don't know that much about it, but I will also say one of the things that kept me out of the space is so much of what I'm seeing is just like, I don't understand what the underlying product is that someone's trying to come up with. And also I don't here I see it. And also clearly the PR firm clearly sees it. There's clear, value has clearly already been delivered. We have hundreds of thousands of users. Our retention numbers are through the roof. The content is making money. Most mobile apps are not generating revenue at this stage of their existence. The fact that we're making this much revenue this early and the audience is sticking, that is super valuable. And those are the metrics, and I'm going to use air quotes here, that the real world cares about. Real world cares about retention. They care about monetization. They care about user acquisition, organic user acquisition. Those are the metrics that really matter. And those are the things that Ecomi or that VeVe is demonstrating. And those are the things that a company like that firm is going to get behind, because those are the things that they can point at. It's like, this is real demonstrable value that this company is generating. That is what people are going. So to me, if I'm looking for and by the way, hype isn't a real metric. Hype is is a feel good. Hype is a cheap pop. That's about as much value as it has to us. But the number of people who are coming into the app and staying in the app and spending money in the app, that's real numbers that you can build a business behind. And that's the real value being delivered. And again, I don't know what the other companies are. I'm also of the few that I do know, that I'm just not gonna I'm just not going to shit talk people right now.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, yeah, like put a couple of beers in me and get me off the podcast, and then I'll start telling you who I think is who is actually garbage out there.
We need to
But
plan that. We'll schedule
like,
it in for next time.
I'm not going to just like talk about what like it's like we're doing our thing, and like from what I've seen, there's like real demonstrable value by the metrics that matter to the real world. The metrics that matter to crypto are just, hype is just not a real metric. So it's like, let's like and this is also a thing that's like people can learn about this stuff, like, and not just learn about crypto, but like learn about what is valuable in an app. Like, if like, I don't know how many of users have ever bothered to look us up on Sensor Tower or something like that. Like, if you want to see the like real value and real metrics like around VeVe, like that's where like that's a place you can go and see, oh, that's an app, that's how much money they're making a month. Like, you can see that data is available. And that's like, to me, that's like the real research. If you want to do that, again, this is like, now my side is the content side. I understand the gaming side of it. I understand the content side. The crypto, really not my area of expertise. I'm learning about it. It's interesting, but I think people should learn more, less about like, if you really want to understand what you're investing in crypto, don't just understand the crypto product, understand the underlying product that it's trying to represent, and try to understand that. Like, and actually ask the question, is this product benefited from being in this, like, from the crypto version? And the truth is, like, if you can't see, like, if the only benefit is it's decentralized, that's not a benefit. Like, just because you've turned something into something decentralized, that doesn't actually make it more valuable. That doesn't deliver value back to that user. Like, just because I can decentralize something, just because I can put it on a blockchain, doesn't actually make it better. Like, so I think that's the kind of thing that I would hope that people who are trying to get into this space could start looking for, and trying to understand what's going, because that'll make smarter investors. And honestly, smarter investors, you'll see that, like, smarter investors mean smarter investments, and smarter investments mean putting more valuable into the things that have demonstrated that value, which I think is just good for everybody. And I think good for us, because I think we have that real value.
Yeah. That was definitely insightful, because I think a lot of people just need to hear that you know, it's not about, you know, when honestly, something is going to hit a certain price point. It's about, you know, what's going to get it to that price point. And they just
and like, even like down to like, if people are curious about what, like, I'm happy to tell people about what I do and like what this process is. This is also like, you can learn about this stuff, and not learn about it to become someone who does it, but learn about it to understand. Because if you can have that dialogue and that understanding of what the underlying like process and the product is, it just makes you much more informed in terms of understanding the market. And it's not just like how it relates to crypto. It's understand what is the this stuff is publicly available. Like, people can go out there and learn and become much more informed investors and informed content consumers. Like, you can build up, like, media literacy is a thing. You can learn more about what you're looking at and understanding what you're reading, what you're learning about. Like, that's something that I think would be really helpful for everybody, just in general, but also specifically helpful for people to understand what we're doing and understand some of our decision making.
Cool. Okay, so
again, I'm ranting over here.
No, this is good stuff. This is gold stuff. I know people are going to be like, you know, they're going to be taking segments of everything you've kind of said, and then kind of crop it together into a meme, and like probably turn your skin green and turn you into the Hulk or something. That's coming. The memes are coming.
People are going to be like, people are going to be, how dare I ask them to do like independent research? How dare
I? It's become a meme now. The what's it? Stickers don't threaten me. Like I know that line is gold.
That was that was again. I mean, I will try and like, again, put some beer in me, get me off the podcast, and I'll tell you how I really feel about this shit. But I'm not like, that was like we should not be like Twitter beef. Just like hype isn't valuable, Twitter beef isn't valuable either.
So I guess the question is, what's your favorite beer? What's your favorite beer? If that's the next question.
Beer? Oh geez. Oh fuck, see, now I've backed myself into a corner where it's like Um,
I really like Blue Moon. If you haven't tried that, it's
I
like a
have,
bit of Belgian
yeah,
beer.
I have
Yeah.
Blue Moon. I like Pilsner Urquell a bit, but I'm like, see, people are going to judge me hard. Like, I don't know enough. I don't know enough about beer to answer this question properly.
At least you didn't say you're a Foster's guy.
No, I'm not. I'm gonna have to become one when I actually go like finally meet with Reese in Australia
Oh,
or
is Reese a Foster's guy?
I won't compare. I won't. I know Australia and New Zealand are different. I don't know what the beer, like the main beer is in New Zealand. So, or like the main, like their version of Bud Light, which I'm assuming is like what people think of as Foster's. So,
all right, yeah. If Reese is a Foster's guy, I feel like I've unintentionally offended him now. It's just
yeah,
like a thing
that
in
will
the
never be on
UK
this
where
podcast.
if you're a Foster's person, you're considered like super basic.
Yeah, that makes sense. Is it the one like the one with the 4 X's? I think there's a beer. It's not there's there's a New Zealand beer that I believe has like 4 X's as the logo. I just don't know what it's called.
Yeah.
But it's like the Bud Light of New Zealand. Anyway, this is so off topic. Whatever.
No. People are here to find out, when Pokemon and we're talking about, what beers you like.
Yeah. No, again, it's like, yeah, all that is.
So we're going to move on to like the community questions now, just because that was kind of like mostly the tech questions. We'll come back to one other question at the end just to kind of like hear a bit more about what attracted you to VeVe versus where you were before. We'll do that at the end. So we know that NFTs, for example, they have pointers which point to an asset, and then that asset exists somewhere, wherever it is. If you wanted to go back and say make an update to that asset, so we know, for example, Ritmo, that was originally static and that became animated, the first animated asset. And I'm really, really looking forward to Monster Hunter. Actually, I'll ask you a question on that in a second, but because I've seen in David Yu's showroom that he had the Monster Hunter Iceborne Dragon, I forgot the name, but it's animated as well, doing the death move. And I guess, can you go back and like alter NFTs to maybe improve the quality in the future as hardware technology improves as well? Because some people do ask a lot about, is the quality going to improve? It looks a little bit pixelated in some areas. Is that something you guys can do in the future?
Yeah, we certainly can. It entirely depends on what we're doing. Some fixes are really simple, some are extremely complicated. It just depends on what you're trying to do. Adding like with Ritmo getting an animation, like that's a fairly simple character to rig and then to animate. Something like a Monster Hunter asset is a much bigger, much more complicated, much more detailed character. The asset might not even be built originally to be animated. Like there's like a certain limit. The reason you need to rig something to animate it. But if your character wasn't set up to be rigged to be animated, it's hard to go back in and redo it later. So it's like it's really entirely dependent on the asset and what the change is. For me, I try to like go for whatever we can do that's going to positively impact as many assets as possible and deliver as much value as possible is what we're looking for. So like lighting improvements, lighting is the same for every asset ultimately because it's lit by the scene. So I'm like, whatever lighting improvements we can make, I'm really excited for because that makes a big improvement. The problem with lighting improvements is they're extremely performance intensive. Like I think I hinted at this last time, but almost like, again, I'll take like on God of War, what I was working on, basically, we had a 33 millisecond frame budget, which means everything we have to draw, everything has to be calculated in 33 milliseconds in order to maintain our frame rate. Of that 33 milliseconds that we had, about 20 of it was dedicated just to lighting. So that should give you an idea of how expensive lighting is to do. And that's not just like an engine specific thing. That's just a like kind of across the board rule that lighting is very expensive and very hard to calculate because it's like a kind of a, every time you add a new object or a new light, you have to do that same lighting pass again, like with everything. It's just a really, and it's like all these, like, it's like done in like weird ways because it's all done by like, ray tracing is an entirely different tech, but honestly, way more complicated. It's all done with like generally like with like shadow maps and like lighting maps put on top of things that already exist. So trying to get those to look really good, to run at a really high frame rate on mid-low spec devices is just a very complicated problem.
Yeah.
But it's the thing that as devices generally get better, we can improve that. So, and yeah, I'm like excited to do those kinds of improvements. And it's also not like another thing like shader, like we like changing the materials, changing the shaders to make those better. That's another thing we can do. It's another place where you can find performance gains because there like might be features of the shader that we're not using. And if you like take that out, it removes that cost and it like that rendering cost. But those are like really small incremental improvements that you'd have to find.
Yeah.
It's hard to answer for everything because it's like, I mean, yes, it's all very doable on paper, but whether it's something that is going to deliver that extra value, we can actually make performant at a fairly low cost of development is something that just needs to be explored per asset. But something, it's like totally doable and something we're excited about.
Cool. That sounds really cool. So in the future, we can potentially see, you know, some of the NFTs that were restricted by, you know, the technology of the time kind of getting modernized, I guess. Yeah. A little bit of a
for sure. It entirely depends on the state of that asset.
Yeah.
And also like what the larger protocols are. So there's a lot of things that would impact it, but yeah, it's entirely possible to do that.
So basically every single NFT that you didn't contribute to, we're gonna see it getting upgraded. I want to go back and do that. Everyone with season 1 Adventure Time, the Ice King. Trevor, upgrade this.
That's like those like wiggly little spindly arms are going to be really hard to rig.
Yeah.
I know. Besides the asset probably not being set up to be rigged, but like, do you know how many little I point to get that like that wiggliness?
Oh
to them?
yeah.
Like, that's going to be like that's like a lot of little because that's a lot of little joints you have to put in. So and I feel bad for whoever the artist is that has to. Well, you could probably do it by an IK thing. Like IK is like, so there's this idea of like kinematics, forward kinematics and inverse kinematics. And so like forward kinematics is basically I animate from the front joint. This is my understanding. This someone who's an animator is probably going to tell me why I'm completely wrong. But it's almost like if I animate from this joint and basically I bend it up, it's like the other, like, and I move this, everything down the hierarchy moves with it because it's the child of that. Inverse kinematics is where you start at the base. So I say, my hand's here and I want to move it over here. So it'll animate that and pull everything up the hierarchy with it and try to adjust it within certain parameters. So I guess if I were to do the point of saying that is if I were to animate the hands, I would probably do it the IK method where I move the hands and then the arm just does the wiggly shit. And then I go back in and clean it up later.
Yeah, definitely. No, I've played around with Blender as well when I was doing my kind of VR game, and shout out to all the animators because literally my first iteration was basically, you know, the kind of the wrapping of the textures was just completely off. I had like some derpy looking eyes everywhere. The animations was like there's this game where you basically it's like a very, very famous like old school game where you press keys on your keyboard to move the joints of this character in a relay race. Yeah, that's the one. Yeah, Quap. Yeah. And my character was like a Quap character, like kind of. I'm like, wow. Okay, that did not look like walking at all. That looked like
Quap is like a great jank game like that.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like such a game. It's so like defined by its stupid system and the fact that it's impossible, but it's brilliant. I love Quap.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't like it as a game. I like the idea of Quap.
Yeah. That is literally what my character looked like some derpy Quap monstrosity. So this is actually a question that loads of people have been asking because so before I got into tech, like, you know, I saw AR and VR and I was thinking, wow, this stuff is really, really cool. Like, you know, everyone should be doing this without kind of, you know, thinking from the perspective like, how accessible is this technology to most people? You know, from a business perspective, does it make sense to invest in it? And a lot of people probably aren't aware that, you know, the kind of AR, VR industry is not that greatly like profit generating, even though it's really, really cool. I think that's mainly limitations due to accessibility because, you know, how many of us own a Google HoloLens, for example? Like, I definitely don't. Whereas everyone owns like, you know, a basic smartphone. Well, maybe most people out there, definitely more than, you know, those who own like a wearable device. So just with that in mind, do you see this gap of like, you know, accessibility to the tech that allows VeVe to innovate more be closing in the future? If not, then maybe how long do you reckon it will take? But during that meantime, whilst we have this kind of like gap to accessibility for, you know, high quality AR VR, what would you say is like VeVe's main priority for consumers and as a business until then?
Okay. I'll start with the AR VR components. So I think of AR and VR, they're honestly wildly different when it comes to how you implement them. AR is like, I think that honestly, I think AR is the successful one, and it's ultimately it's a technology. Like it's like it's a technology like .NET is a technology. It's just something you use to build software. You can use to build software, use to build games. And what I like about it is how accessible it is. The fact that it works on a mobile device. Everything in games, and I would argue kind of everything in software for the last 15 years has been running in the direction of accessibility, like making content more accessible. That's like the rise of mobile platforms. Generally games saying the same, stay going to like more free to play games, games like at the AAA price, actually still staying generally at $60. It's like incremental, like that $60 is worth less now than it was 10 years ago. So the game has gotten incrementally cheaper to buy while still getting wildly more expensive to develop. So everybody's running in this direction of how do we make this hardware more accessible in order to grow the market? And then you have VR, which is going the complete opposite direction. VR is dedicated hardware, it's expensive. If it's on mobile, it's not particularly good enough to wow anybody. So you have to really, to wow someone, you kind of have to do a PC implementation, which means you need a high-end PC as well. The tools and the space you need to do it is massive. It's just like, I don't see how, like, yes, the technology is cool, but there's a lot of like anti-gravity is a cool technology. It doesn't mean it exists. Like, and it's like, it's a cool idea. It doesn't mean we can build it. And like VR, same kind of thing. It's like, it's a really cool idea, but it's like, we can't build it in a way right now that actually caters to like regular people and like, and is like cheap and accessible and available to everybody. So by the time it gets there, that it's that cheap and accessible, everything else is going to be way far ahead of it. Just like flat screen experiences, mobile experiences are just going to be like, when this is powerful enough to run like a VeVe or something, like a high-end device, think of how powerful it will be when it's not trying to power that device and the kind of stuff you can do. So everything's just like, I don't see how it catches on in the consumer market, honestly. I think it's too expensive. I think it's too niche. And I actually think I don't think it's particularly user friendly, like in a way, like again, it looks cool, but I don't know anybody who's like, oh, I can't wait to play VR games. Like they released, and like my like example is like, they released a sequel to Half-Life, which is like the meme, they will never make this game. And they literally released a sequel to that game. VR, and nobody played it. It sold like 1.1 to 2 million copies, which probably made $100 million on that game. That's a good chunk of change. That game probably cost 80 million to develop because the production values are so high. And if they release that on a traditional platform, it's Half-Life 3. How many copies of that game would they have sold? 20 million, 25 million? How many people want that game or would just buy it for the meme of it? Like, they literally left hundreds of millions of dollars on the table to try to make VR happen, and it didn't take off. Like, that's like, if you can't release that, like, and you're not gonna, like, I don't know what other game could like try to do. Like they said, oh, is the next Grand Theft Auto like VR exclusive? Again, it sounds really fucking cool, but I don't know who's gonna go out of their way to spend the money to buy that rig to play it. Like, I just don't see it. Like, so yeah, me as a game developer, not excited by the platform at all. As a consumer, it's interesting, but I'm not really ready to make that jump to buy it. And I think most people are in that same boat. So I think what we need to be doing is focusing, like what I want to be doing is how do I get on more platforms so I can get more people in and experiencing this.
Yeah.
A accessible content future, a platform agnostic future, a higher fidelity on devices that people actually own future is more exciting to me than chasing a niche platform like VR.
Yeah, definitely. There've been a lot of people who, have kind of raised the issue where their phone might not be exactly compatible with, VeVe, for example. They've had to like upgrade phones, for example, just kind of like making it as accessible as possible to everyone, because it makes sense, because the more people who have VeVe, then, the better it is for the growth of VeVe. So I guess your priority right now, would it be more to do with kind of just getting more content and making that as good as possible, whilst simultaneously kind of raising awareness of, hey, we have this really, really cool content on this platform, check it out, kind of thing?
Yeah. My number one priority is content. I care a lot about experience as well around that content, and that's mostly just because of like my love of game, like my love of games, my love of gaming, my love of game development. So I'm having more of I feel like I'm having more of an impact on that side of it. But I also like for me, it's like the way I feel like the way we win is just having not just like more content than everybody. It's not necessarily more content than everybody else, so that's obviously something we want to work towards, but just having stuff that's just so much better than what everybody else is doing, and something that's actually good enough that like someone who is not doing digital collectibles makes the jump with us. And if we can do that, that's how I think we really win. And all this other stuff will come, because ultimately the gamification, all that is value add to existing and future collectibles. That's that's the value of that stuff. So and making those things more valuable and more exciting for people to engage in. And I don't think that's a platform thing. I don't think that's a technology thing. I think that's a more of like a, how do we cater to like player behavior, human behavior, delivering, like giving people something they're excited about, something they can deeply engage in. And that is not driven by a technology. I mean, a technology supports it. You need a technology for it to function, but ultimately it's not the differentiating like component of it. It's not like no one's going to jump. No one's excited. I don't think there are people who are like, oh, VeVe's the future. Like if VeVe's the future because of AR, that's not really an answer to me. VeVe's the future because the shit that we make is so fucking good. Like that's what we're trying. That's what I'm hoping for. That's what I want to move towards.
I mean, just as a consumer of VeVe, like what truly attracted me, and I guess this kind of matches in with the point that you raised, is the firstly is the team. A lot of them have personally contributed quite heavily to the product. We've got Dave Yu on the licensing side. We've had Michael Duffy, who wrote a lot of the backend code himself. We've got you, who's like literally diving in, creating this content. So that's what really excited me, the fact that we've got this passionate team who have personally invested into the product. And I always say that if the product is really, really good, then whatever investments you have in it, like the price will go up as long as the product is good. You don't need to rely on hype, because the hype will come with the if the product is good. And a lot of people, they're kind of obsessive over certain licenses being released. They just want as many licenses as possible. But if the product isn't super amazing, we know that regardless of how many licenses there are, it's just not going to do that well. And there are case studies like a certain manufacturer of stickers, for example, has a lot of licenses, and I've tried the product. Other people have tried the product. I'm not gonna drop the name, because people are like, hey, we've had our go at it. But a certain manufacturer of stickers, they've got so many licenses, Pokemon, Marvel, whatever, and the product's just not that good. And it shows like how active or I guess how passionate the user base is.
I think it's I actually think it's more than just a good product. Like and I just gave you an example. Half-Life 3 is the best VR game. It's like everybody who's played it says it's one of the best games they ever played. That doesn't mean it was successful. Like, I mean, maybe in the scope of VR, it's successful, but it's like, that is like it has to be more than just a good product. It has to be like, how did the product market fit? It's about am I building something that people really care about, that is really good, and that people really care about and delivers a lot of value. That's why it's not just about building something that's super high quality, but like building things to help us achieve the outcomes that actually lead to the success. So like measurable success. So we want to make stuff that's really exciting and really high quality. It'll sell. Monetization's obviously a good metric for success. But there's also, if we make something that's really deeply engaging, people will come back. It retains users. Like I think of things in terms of outcomes. Almost as much as, if not more, than I think of things in terms of product. Like I'm thinking about what's the outcome I'm trying to achieve with this thing. And quality is a way for us, licenses is a way for us to achieve the outcome. quality of the content is a way for us to achieve the outcome. The fact that it's minted and that it's like the true rarity is a way for us to achieve those outcomes of like deep engagement, like user, like all those things. So like if you start thinking in terms of like what are we trying to achieve while we're doing, what's the strategy, and like what are the choices we're making to help us achieve those things, I think it'll start crystallizing the decision making a little bit more, and you'll start understanding a little more of like, okay, I see why they're doing that. I see what they're going for. And I think that is the kind of thing that'll make everybody, I think it'll make you more excited for the project because you'll see what we're going for. It'll make you a savvier investor in this project or other projects that you might look at, because you can start seeing, okay, what are the outcomes they're trying to achieve and how well are they achieving those outcomes? And for the outcomes we're trying to achieve, I think we're doing a pretty good job so far, and hopefully we'll continue that. And
I think you guys have done I mean, as someone who kind of works in the industry, like I've been saying this so many times to everyone who says, why does VeVe move so slow? I've said, if the company was a superhero, it would be the Flash. Like,
I know this is like
you guys move at ridiculous lightning speed. Like, and people think I'm trolling when I say this, but
no.
You guys move at like I've said this myself. If I was a dev with Ecomi VeVe, like the app would still be on the very first drop in beta. Like you guys are like literally like I'm not even exaggerating. Like you've said yourself, like it can take months to develop one NFT, and we're getting drops of multiple NFTs every week. Like that is ridiculous. Like I actually don't know how you do it.
In development, like it's like we're building a shitload of stuff. The team that's building this stuff is pretty damn large and like pretty wide reaching in order to deliver this stuff. Like the volume is there. It's just got to take time for it to get going. And like we talk, like I mean, you're in sprints. Like the concept of a sprint,
literally like 2 weeks, whatever.
2-week cycle. Like a sprint is 2 weeks long. It's called a sprint because you're rapidly sprinting to like through that cycle. But it's still a 2-week cycle. And when people are like freaking out over like 2-day turnover, I'm like, it's just like the time scale is just so off. And it's like, I just see that, I'm like, do a little bit of research, man. Come on. Like, it's like, I'm ranting again. I'm just like, I'm going to turn the whole community against me if I keep this up. People are like, oh God, he's hating on us so much. Well, it's like, I'm trying not to.
No, that's literally why I just, had to make all of this stuff super explicit. Like, rant as much as you want, because I've dealt with this as well, especially like, not just from consumers, but you get people who are, I'm not saying that this probably is the case for VeVe either, but you get people who are on like the more business side, the product side, where they don't quite understand, the underlying tech. And they just assume, how long is it going to take to, build this new feature? And you're like, well, if you estimate this, and this, probably like 2 months. And then there's time for uncertainty as well, testing. And they look at you and they're like, oh, so you can do it next week. And it's like, no, that's not how it works. And a lot of people have that mindset where it's like, they like think, oh, you've made NFTs before. Like, it should take you a few days to like, make a Pokemon one or whatever. And it's like, you can't just get something and like do it in a few days.
Like, you could make a model in 3 days, but it's not going to be good.
It's not going to be very good. Yeah. Like VeVe's premium.
Like, and I'm not trying to make something that I can make in 3 days. I'm trying to make something that's awesome, because 3 days doesn't help me achieve the outcome I'm trying to achieve.
Yeah. If you want to make something in 3 days, you know what, you might as well work for Quid. You might as well make blue ponies with a Devo texture. I need to stop the Quid jokes. It's going to turn into a pretty funny video, but so I think that's all really, really good stuff. Like this is stuff that the community just definitely needs to hear and needs to know, and there are loads who are going to be appreciative of this. So just I guess in terms of so this was another question that was asked by the community, is kind of feature wise for VeVe. So we've had some really, really cool ideas. One idea that we have heard Reese talk about is kind of geolocation stuff. So I don't know if you'll be very much familiar with it, but
no, I understand.
Oh, okay, cool. Yeah. So Pokemon Go is kind of like a game that people tend to draw a lot of parallels to, because Pokemon Go has kind of like the AR aspect. It's got a huge fan base. And it uses a lot of geolocation based stuff. Like I don't know if you've played Pokemon Go, but there's like raiding. There's like the Pokestops on certain locations. So with VeVe, moving forwards, we know that with COVID as well, lockdowns, restrictions are easing. So things like Comic Cons are going to start opening again. And I know that technically VeVe wouldn't need to actually be at a Comic Con physically in person. They would probably just need like the coordinates of where it's happening in the world and the time, and they could kind of set up a a event there, even though they're not there in person, which I think is a very, very powerful thing to be able to do. Because traditionally, a lot of events, you'd need like people from the company to go there, get a hotel, show up, have like a stand set up, but you guys can just do it remotely, which is really, really cool, and it's very, very powerful. So moving forwards, do you see like the scope of having kind of location-based events coming to VeVe? If so, like things like Comic-Con based events, or Pokemon, they do this event called Go Fest, where it's like a once a year kind of thing, where they'll host an event at a location. People have to go to that location and they get to participate in like in-game events, unlock cool new things. They get bonuses if they like, make friends on the app who are also there. They get like vouchers that they can redeem and things like that. Do we see like this kind of like expanding community aspect in VeVe?
I would love to do that kind of stuff. But like, I mean, as a fan, I'd love to go to something like your Comic-Con. That would be really cool, especially to be an exhibitor there.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's definitely something we're interested in doing. I can't talk to certain plans. I can't talk to plans that we have for that yet. That's really that's more of honestly more of a marketing exercise than a content exercise. But yeah, it's something I certainly would be interested in doing. I think we all would.
Cool. Okay. So we haven't got too many questions left. Just a few more. So what I did also want to ask is, in terms of competitors, so we know that people have been talking about competitors. Reese, actually, the other day when we did an AMA with Reese on the official Discord, I mentioned that Immutable X, so the kind of blockchain that VeVe is moving to, one of their current clients is epics.gg. I don't know if you're familiar with them, but yeah, okay, cool. Yeah, I mean, I imagine you would do, you like familiarize yourself with all the competitors. But just from your, I guess, just your opinion as someone in the space, not someone officially associated with VeVe, but just, a consumer of these kind of products, is there a competitor out there who you thought, like, wow, this is really, really cool. These guys are good. A competitor that, in terms of their overall team, IP, product, and vision, like, is there anyone out there who you thought, this is a really cool company, like, relative to VeVe in the space as well?
Yeah. I think so for me, coming from I'm going to always judge this stuff mostly from a content perspective than from I can't really judge it from a crypto perspective yet. I'm not informed enough about the space to understand like where so it's like, is like, and I mean that in terms of like, is it truly rare enough, or is it like, have they minted enough or few for the value? Like I look at what people are making. I'm like, wow, they did a really good presentation. They made really good content there. I think so far the only one who's been like, okay, they kind of figured out the content presentation is the Top Shot stuff. I think that stuff is like, I will say it's a great license. I mean, the NBA obviously huge.
Yeah.
I don't like the video moments.
The moments,
exciting to me, and I think you could do much cooler things with the video.
Yeah.
But where they really kick ass is their presentation, like the design of their website, the experience, even just the motion, like the motion graphic work that they did is really solid.
I really like opening the moment packs. Like you get that.
Exactly. The pack cracking like that is super good. Like that's a huge part of blind box kind of games is the experience of opening the pack. So I think they kicked ass in that. Honestly, I talked about, speaking of Immutable, I played Gods Unchained, which was my first like NFT driven like kind of game. They also do a really good pack cracking. Now, it's hard for me to judge. Like I worked on a card game for 3 years, and it's like, so it's like, and I'm really burnt out on the genre, but I see what they're going for. And I think like the presentation, the art style, the consistency of it, I think they do a really good job as well. again, that's judging more from a presentation content perspective than from a crypto perspective. Someone who knows crypto would have to tell me if that side is like solid or not. But it's like, I think what they're doing is pretty cool. Lots of crap out there too. I've seen that.
Yeah, a lot.
Actually, most of it. Honestly, this is like, for me, what I think would be cool is, I know we're trying to really push the quality bar up as high as we can and deliver as much value with what we're doing. I'd like to see if there is a competitor in the space, I'd like to see people within their lane doing the same thing, because if we don't do that, we're never going to, you need to do that in order to grow and increase the appeal of it, because people, we see the crypto value in it, but people who aren't into crypto don't. And if they don't see that value and they only see crappy assets sold at a really high price, they're not going to buy in. So it's kind of this is like, in my opinion, what we need to do our part to grow the space.
Yeah. Just on that point of, blind boxes. So we know that Reese and Dan, they've both spoken about blind boxes, saying that, something that they want to bring later on. And from judging from the current NFTs that we've had released, obviously they've kind of released 3 or 4 in a set. Would you think blind boxes would work better where it's a series where there's quite a lot of characters to work with? Maybe sports, for example, or anything where there's a lot of characters, because I don't see blind boxes working very well when there's only like 5 characters. It's like, you're going to complete your set after a few packs.
I totally agree. I think you need, no, actually, I say that. I think there's things we can do to make it work. I generally think you need like an ensemble cast, for lack of a better word, or some way to have like a lot of a similar type of asset. I think people I hate to put this out there, but like Pokemon as an example would be a good example of a blind. I mean, it already has its own history.
Yeah.
That is not a confirmation.
So guys, Pokemon blind boxes are coming.
Just like the Drive Rex, just an example, not a confirmation. Don't at me.
They're coming.
I know they're coming. They're going to hit me up on Twitter, and it's going to be.
There's going to be people out there who are watching this. They're going to basically crop out the video, just take out that little segment of you saying Pokemon blind boxes, and just like use that as like super clickbait, like Pokemon confirmed. Let's go to the moon.
Exactly. Well, again, a cheap pop hype isn't as valuable as real engagement. So that's hopefully the lesson we all learned today.
Oh, that's really cool. Yeah, because I was thinking kind of more sports brands where there's loads of players. I think that would be really cool for blind boxes.
Yeah, again, not a confirmation, but it would work. That's another place where it would work.
Yeah, NFLPA blind boxes are coming. Just kidding. Okay, so kind of like going on to the more fun questions. So out of the current collectibles for VeVe, so 2-part question. Which one is your current favorite collectible? And just as a user, not someone, representing VeVe and whatnot, which collectible as a user would you like to see come to VeVe? Okay.
Favorite collectible right now. I really like the DeLorean. And I like the I don't have it yet. I really want the Nightwing black and white. I think that one's really cool as well.
Yeah.
The Nightwing, but that's more of like I think it's a cool character. As far as like a brand that I really kind of for VeVe, I mean, as a fan, completely speaking as a fan, the 2 IP that I would be more excited than anything in the world to see on VeVe are Avatar: The Last Airbender and
And say, which was the last one?
And Dead Space.
Oh, Dead Space, nice.
I like Avatar is probably probably my favorite cartoon like ever. It's such a good show. I love that show so much, and it's like the fan base. I know how passionate that fan base is about it, and I think it's just it could be really cool to see, and I can imagine really cool stuff with it. And Dead Space is. I'm just gonna go like as far as like a game that's like just something that I can experience, that I want to get, like, that I love to play and like get immersed in. Like I love that game. It's one of those games where it's like, and again, just speaking like as a game developer, like that I like the idea of like working on my own IP and doing that kind of stuff. But like that would be exciting to me. But like as far as IP I'd want to work on, like Dead Space is one of those IP that it's like it's super cool, but I don't think it like I don't just want experiences as a fan. I actually feel like I have like things I want to say within that universe. Like I don't feel that about other like as a corollary, like Star Wars. Huge fan of Star Wars. I think it's super cool. I really like it, but I don't really want to. I just want to experience it as a fan, and I just want to consume really good Star Wars content that people are making.
Yeah.
I don't want to like. I don't really want to make stuff for it. I don't want to be a producer of that content. Whereas like Dead Space feels like there's stuff that they haven't done yet in that universe. And I want to be the one to like make that happen. So if Electronic Arts is listening, please make my dreams come true.
I think you need to contact Dave and be like, hey, I really like Avatar. I really like Dead Space. Can you do your thing?
Yeah. I mean,
get your connections.
Yes, I would really like that to happen. I think that also like the armors in Dead Space are the coolest things like ever. The ships are awesome. Even the necromorphs are cool. Like it's awesome. Maybe that'll be, because I know I said I made a Twitch channel. Maybe that'll be the first thing I play. I'll just go run through Dead Space.
That's cool. Just on the point of kind of like cool brands. So I imagine you're obviously working on the newer upcoming ones. And back in February, there was this NFT conference where Dan Crovers kind of showed some of the brands that are coming that we haven't seen yet: Star Trek, Jurassic Park. A couple that I guess maybe the fan base isn't there, or people just haven't really talked a lot about, were Trolls, DreamWorks, and Voltron. Because I actually do like Voltron. Can I ask, are you working on that, or was that kind of like done by someone else, or being done by someone else?
I'm trying to think of the best way to answer this. Voltron is a really cool IP, and we were I'm not going to comment on that.
Okay. Cool. Okay, that's no problem. Okay.
Well, I'm really excited. Now that one,
I'm excited about it.
I'm really excited to see how people read into.
Yeah. I mean, I'm excited as well. It was literally only ever. It was interesting because Dan Crovers has obviously been in a lot of like conferences, and we only ever really saw it back in like that February one. And I think it was last year they did that. It was the NFT conference. But a lot of people just weren't aware about the whole DreamWorks thing until recently. Okay, so that's pretty cool.
I mean, as a fan, I'm also a big fan of that show, so it would be something I'd be excited to.
I would love to have that animated. Like that would be one of the ones where if it's animated, like I know it would just it would be amazing to have that in your showroom. Animated Voltron. Okay, that's really cool. And just going back to like yourself, so VeVe obviously they've covered themselves in a lot of bases that a lot of projects don't do. They've got the PR side, they've got the expanding product, they've got the content, they've got one that people never really talk about, and this is one that I find extremely important, is they've covered themselves like very heavily like on the legal aspect as well. They're doing everything by the book. A lot of people aren't aware that the reason why MTL takes gems to OMI take so long is they need MTL, which is a whole crazy amount of legislation. Buybacks as well, they have to follow a lot of legislation, and I believe because the company's based in Singapore, there's like very, very tight Singaporean regulation, and Risa said they've got a whole legal team and advisors as well on certain areas. So VeVe's kind of like covered themselves in all aspects. So what is it about VeVe that kind of drew you or attracted you to it versus when you were at Riot?
Yeah, so the number one thing is honestly the content, the licenses we get to work with. My world is content, and being able to be in a space where like I was working on one very cool brand, but it was like me as a tiny cog in this larger machine developing this tiny corner of this very large thing. Now I get to like have some ownership, like creative ownership on not just one, but like dozens, hundreds of IP and like creating awesome content and like imparting my vision on it. Now, some of it I deeply love and care about and deeply understand. Some of it it's new to me, and I get to learn about new stuff, and I get to interact with those communities and the creators of that content to learn about it. That's one side of it that's really exciting to me. The other part that I love is not the IP side necessarily, but actually the content creators. The people that we get to work with are like best in the world at what they do. Like, so as someone who came from like an art production, art pipeline thing, I knew a lot of who these teams were. And like, I'm not gonna, like, again, you'll figure out, do your research, you'll figure out who are some of who these teams are that we're working with. Yeah. These teams are like, they're just incredible. And it's cool to be able to build these relationships with those teams, which is like, for like, personally and career-wise really valuable, but also it's just we get to build the coolest stuff, and the fact that I get to come with them with, hey, you get to work on these really cool IP and there's a ton of them and we have a huge pipeline of stuff that we can build, that's like music to their ears. So being able to be like a kind of like a marquee partner for them is really exciting. And it's just like we're building the coolest shit. Like this stuff is just, it looks, even the work in progress stuff looks so cool. And I can't wait till one day one of these licensors is going to say, yes, we'll let you like show off some like work in progress stuff. A lot of them are understandably very protective about that, so we're not going to push it. But like, I'd love to be able to share more like examples of what this stuff looks like when we're building it, because it is really cool. And it's a cool way if like you're interested in learning about content development, game development, NFTs, any of that stuff. It's a really cool way to like learn about that stuff, to actually see the product. So it's just really fun. Like, I'm having a blast working on this stuff.
Yeah, definitely. I've said before that, you know, your passion just like struck out to everyone. Like the way you talk about the work, it's really, really cool, really inspiring.
The way that I yell about the screen and the way I rant
and the way you rant, yeah, you rant with passion.
Yes,
we can see that, especially when it's got to do with manufacturers of stickers.
Yeah, well, that's true. That is, so I know how the internet works, and I know I will never live that down. That's going to haunt me for the rest of my life. So I guess I should just embrace it.
Yeah, that should be the next competition.
Yeah,
make memes about, you know,
yeah,
VeVe is not threatened by stickers.
Yeah, I mean, and like the other thing is, it's like we gotta. I mean, I am passionate. I am very passionate about this stuff. I care deeply about it, and you gotta own it, because it's like that's like how you be honest about this stuff. Like, and I'm also like, that's the reason I also like call out the problems with it, because it's like when I say like, hey, the lighting could be better, or like those kind of stuff. Like, it's like, if you like, everybody who works on this thing, like all these things, like whether you hear about it from them or not, like everybody who's working on this stuff, they care a lot about what they're doing. It's not just me, it's everybody on the team. It's honestly everybody on every team I've ever worked with in the game space. Like, everybody cares about it, and you try to make it as good as you can. And it hurts when it doesn't come out the way you want it to. It really, trust me, no one's more upset about a project being disappointing in one way or another than the people who worked on it. So it's like, I feel like if I can try to impart and show some of that, like, I'm not the only one experiencing this. It's everybody who works on this kind of stuff.
Yeah, I've genuinely been impressed by the quality, especially reading into your criticism of the blue pony thing by the manufacturer of stickers.
Yeah.
Like,
I mean,
that goes to show,
lighting, no fucking lighting. Are you kidding
me? Literally, welcome to the dark side. We have no lighting.
Yeah. Well, it wasn't. No, there was. It's not to the dark side. There is no dark side, because you have no lighting. Lighting derives from the shadow. So there is no dark side, because it's not shaded, because there's no.
There's no side.
Like, lighting is the glue that holds 3D assets together. Like, you can make a beautiful asset at the highest level of detail, but if it's unlit, it's going to look like shit. So please light your models.
Oh, yeah, that's pretty cool. Yeah, definitely, like, really, really good stuff. So just, I guess, lastly, in terms of, you know, anything that you want to share that you're excited about, or, you know, that you can share, or, you know, just things that you would like to see happening. Now's, you know, you can just talk about anything cool that you want to, that we haven't covered yet.
Yeah, I'll say this. I think the coolest assets that we're working on is stuff obviously we haven't announced. It's the stuff that's yet to come. We're making some really cool stuff. I can't wait for you guys to see it. I am really enjoying like spending the time engaging with the community. Most of the time, I think people like almost everybody is like really friendly and excited to be involved in this. And like, I'm like actually not just me, the whole team is like really excited to share in that with you guys. And we're trying everything we can to like to do right by you guys. I know you, other stuff, like if you guys have questions, not just like VeVe related or NFT related, or content related, even games related, I love talking about games and game development. It feels like I'm talking about myself, and everybody loves talking about themselves. So like anytime you have questions related to that, if you're curious about any of this stuff, like just ping me and I'll try to answer it. Obviously, if it's related to specific stuff that we're doing that we can't talk about, I'm not going to answer it, but I'm happy to give you my hot takes on like the latest Call of Duty game or what have you. So it's like, yeah, that's kind of all I have. Just like keep engaging with each other, keep engaging with the app, keep talking to me. I'm here for you guys. I want to answer any questions you have.
Cool. That's all really, really good stuff. I'm sure everyone's going to appreciate, everything that you've shared today. On one more point, so we had the competition, which was to create a meme related to myself and 5 DeLoreans. So we have the winner, and Trevor's going to announce the winner. So Trevor, if you will do the honors, the winner is?
The winner is McShack-Attack.
McShack-Attack. So I think everyone just had a massive laugh. I will probably add the meme to this video, edit it in, obviously with the audio probably altered just because of the copyright. But if you haven't seen it, check out the original one on the Twitter. I'll link it in the description. But yeah, definitely. So I'll be sending 30 gems your way. Just DM me McShack-Attack and we'll get that sorted. So that's pretty much everything I wanted to cover today. And thank you so much for coming on, Trevor. Everyone really, really enjoyed, having you. And yeah, everyone's just looking forward to kind of seeing where VeVe's going, because like I said, the product is extremely, extremely solid. And you guys are so far ahead in your timeline and development and the pace that you're also moving. Even if there was someone, hypothetically in the same stage as you, your pace is so fast. In a year from now, you'll be like, I believe you'll be like, twice as far ahead of them. So I think that just derives from the passionate people that they've hired, and they've hired clearly the right people for it.
Yeah, and I'm hoping that like people will see like even on the content side, like we're just starting to put our foot on the accelerator with that stuff. So hopefully people are going to see more stuff, better stuff. That's like what I'm excited to do. That's what I'm like here to hopefully deliver to you guys. So yeah, it's exciting.
Is there just anything you want to say to people who maybe are kind of losing faith in the product, something that maybe they should know, because clearly there is like a community who I wouldn't say they are kind of like moon boys, because Reese and I make fun of those guys. We don't care about them, but there's a kind of subsect of the community where they're not as informed about crypto. They're quite new to it, and then they see a lot of the kind of FUD that's out there, and then they get dissuaded. It's just because they haven't quite understood. They're not as informed yet. Is there anything you want to kind of like share with that community of people?
I think what's the best way to put this. I think what I would say to those people, I think it comes back a little bit to what I was saying earlier in terms of look at the crypto, like the crypto is part of this. Think of crypto as a technology. Like it's like just like when I was talking about AR is a technology. Crypto blockchain is a technology. That is something that you can use as a feature to deliver a product. Look at that product and how much it fits the market. And if that thing fits, if that product market fit is there, and they've demonstrated that, that's where the value is. I think that we have demonstrated that, and we're going to continue to push that and demonstrate it further. So yeah, it's like, again, this is coming from, I tend to view the world in terms of like products and outcomes, like when I'm thinking about development and that kind of stuff. So I'm looking for things that it's like, are they doing something that I think has clear appeal and clear potential for success and clear ways to measure that success? And I think we have it. I'm not going to be the guy that tells you that we have like, I'm not the blockchain guy. Like I'm not going to be able, I can't answer those questions, but I could tell you like, do I think this is like, what blockchain is a good, what blockchain based off what their product is, do I think makes sense? And what blockchain do I think not make sense? I think we have something that really makes sense. So
yeah,
that's like what I would say is my reassurance is look at what it represents in the like as a product and the outcome, like the outcomes it's trying to hit. And you'll see that we're doing pretty damn well.
Yeah, definitely where VeVe is kind of like positioned in the market and the niches it's targeting. For me, that was kind of confirmed when we had the whole like, you know, China banning Bitcoin again for the 10 trillionth time and the whole market crashed. But, you know, even though the OMI token also kind of followed that trend, the NFTs on the VeVe app, like they were not very affected at all from what I saw. Like I was literally trying to buy a Gary Frank Batman and it was still selling for just as much as it has always been selling for, and I just couldn't win one. And it got to the point where Brock literally sent me one. Like I think he just felt so bad for me. He's like, here's a Gary Frank Batman, put you out of your misery.
The value is there, the quality is there, the rarity is there. Like regardless of what happens, like in the crypto market, it's like the value, like the quality of that Frank Gehry Batman is still there. The rarity is still there. The license is still there. That's not going anywhere. All that's going to happen is we're going to build more features into the app, potentially improve that asset itself in one way or the other. It's like the value is like the value is should be retained because like we're trying to hit that quality bar, and we're always trying to like deliver more in that realm. Like the metrics we care about are the ones that are real demonstrable measures of value around the product, not necessarily around what crypto bulls are thinking.
Yeah,
it's like around the things that like the real world measures product quality, product value by. That's what I care about, and I think we're doing a good job of it. Yeah, and we're going to continue to.
Yeah, definitely. No, I see VeVe sticking around. Like it is literally like eventually, you know, became like most of my holdings. Like I've just been super excited with everything you guys have been doing. But yeah, I think we'll wrap it up there. So it's been like a pleasure talking to you, Trevor. Really enjoyed it. You know, hopefully this serves as a pretty good point of reference for anyone who, you know, if they ever turn into a moon boy, they can go back and watch this and be like, ah, yes, that's why I invested in VeVe in the first place.
Yes.
But yeah,
that's got to explain to me what the fuck a moon boy is. So, but...
oh, if Reese is probably going to be, well, Reese probably is watching this right now whilst it's streaming. So, you know, I'm pretty sure he's going to have like a proper Urban Dictionary definition of moon boy.
Reese is going to be like, we need to get you caught up on what all this Bitcoin meme shit is.
Yeah, I mean, because I think it's mainly because Reese on a daily basis has dealt with them all. Like he's dealt with the kind of super paper hand moon boy guys that all they care about is when Pokemon. Otherwise, apparently, Ecomi is a scam if they don't have Pokemon, and 10 new exchanges by the end of the month. Like yeah. That's literally like, you know, the upper end of actual moon boys. But yeah, that's that was definitely fun and enjoyable. So I won't keep you any longer. But thank you so much. And thank you everyone who has watched and tuned into the stream. And yeah, please do like and subscribe to support the content as always. I'm going to try and do more of these AMAs with other people in the team. We have one with Reese coming up. So it's going to be myself, Reese, and Wannabe Champ as well. So we're going to have a two-part interview, one kind of on like the more Reese side of things and VeVe, and then more on the kind of like, you know, expansion of OMI, kind of like, you know, future things. Hopefully Reese has some new stuff, because obviously we have pushed that one back a little bit just because hopefully Reese has some new stuff to share with us. So that's going to be, you know, first time exclusive hopefully. So definitely, you know, subscribe to keep updated with that. But yeah, thanks so much for watching guys, and we'll see you next time. See ya.